He walked past 1,000 people every day, invisible in his worn jacket and oil-stained boots. When he stopped traffic to help one stranger, he had no idea someone was watching. What happened next would shake an entire city's understanding of worth. The crosswalk signal flashed red, then amber, then nothing. Just the relentless hum of Memphis traffic cutting through another sweltering afternoon. Marcus Johnson pulled his earbuds out, the tinny echo of hip-hop fading as he watched the elderly white man with the walking cane struggle at the intersection. Cars honked. Drivers rolled their eyes. The old man's shoulders sagged under the weight of indifference, his weathered hand gripping the cane tighter as another wave of vehicles surged past. Marcus didn't think. He just moved, crossing the street against the light, offering his arm with the quiet certainty of someone who'd been overlooked enough times to recognize it in others. For 17 years, Marcus had perfected the art of being invisible. At Jefferson High, teachers' eyes skimmed over his raised hand. In the auto shop where he worked afternoons, customers spoke to his supervisor about his repairs instead of addressing him directly. Walking home through downtown Memphis, well-dressed pedestrians stepped aside with that particular mixture of caution and dismissal reserved for young black men in work clothes. The city moved around him like water around a stone, present but unnoticed, necessary but unremarked upon. His mother, Denise, had warned him early, "Keep your head down, do good work, and maybe they'll see you're different." But different from what, exactly? Different from the assumptions that trailed behind him like shadows? The morning had started with the usual indignities. At the coffee shop where he'd stopped before work, the barista had asked 3 times if he was sure he could afford the large cappuccino. At the auto garage, Mrs. Henderson had insisted on speaking only to Joe, the shop owner, about her BMW repair, even though Marcus had been the one to diagnose and fix her transmission. "I just prefer dealing with management," she'd said, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. Joe had shrugged apologetically after she left, but the $20 tip had still gone into the general register, not Marcus's pocket. These moments accumulated like drops of water slowly filling a bucket, each one small, seemingly insignificant, until suddenly the weight became unbearable. The lunch break incident had been the final straw. Marcus sat alone at a table outside the diner, unwrapping the sandwich his mother had packed, when 3 college kids from the nearby university spotted him. They were live streaming, phones held high, practicing what they called social experiments. One of them approached Marcus with exaggerated confidence, speaking loudly enough for the camera to catch every word. "Hey man, we're doing this thing where we give money to people who need it. You look like you could use some help." He pulled out a crumpled $5 bill, waving it with theatrical generosity. "Just tell us your story. How'd you end up here?" The implication hung in the air like smoke. The watching crowd from the diner's patio began to murmur and chuckle. Someone else started recording. Marcus felt his cheeks burn as he quietly told them he was on his lunch break from work, but they pressed harder. "Come on, don't be shy. Where's your hustle? What's your struggle?" When he stood to leave, one of them called out, "Hey, we're trying to help you out here. Don't be ungrateful." The laughter that followed echoed in his ears for hours. But now, guiding the stranger across the intersection, Marcus felt something shift. The old man moved slowly, deliberately, his breathing labored but steady. His name was Robert Harper, though Marcus wouldn't learn this until later. Robert had served in the Navy for 30 years, had buried 2 wives and raised 3 children, and possessed the kind of quiet dignity that comes from surviving more than most people could imagine. As they reached the opposite curb, Robert turned to Marcus with pale blue eyes that seemed to hold entire lifetimes. "Thank you, son," he said simply. "Not many folks take the time anymore." There was something in his voice, not gratitude exactly, but recognition. As if he understood what it meant to be passed by, overlooked, dismissed. Marcus nodded and continued walking, unaware that a black limousine had been idling at the curb, its driver watching every moment of the exchange. The phone call came during dinner. Marcus and his mother sat at their small kitchen table, sharing leftover meatloaf and discussing his college applications, a conversation that always ended with the same worried silence about money. When the doorbell rang, followed by a gentle knock, Denise frowned. Their neighborhood wasn't the kind where people made social calls after dark. Through the peephole, she saw a man in an expensive overcoat standing beside their door. He was white, well-groomed, and looked completely out of place on their narrow front porch. When she opened the door, he introduced himself as William Harper, Robert's son. The name meant nothing to them initially, but within 5 minutes, both Marcus and his mother understood they were speaking to one of Memphis's most powerful businessmen. William Harper owned a logistics empire that moved goods across the entire Southeast. His companies employed thousands, his political connections reached the governor's office, and his philanthropic foundations had built half the community centers in the city. He was also, Marcus learned, the man who had authorized the mass layoffs at the Riverside Distribution Center 6 years earlier. The same layoffs that had cost Denise her job and forced her to take 3 part-time positions just to pay rent. The irony wasn't lost on any of them as they sat in the cramped living room, surrounded by second-hand furniture and unpaid bills, listening to this man explain how his father had come home that evening, talking about kindness from a stranger. "Robert doesn't accept help from anyone," William said, his voice carrying a weight that suggested years of trying and failing. "He's proud, stubborn, and suspicious of charity in any form." But tonight he couldn't stop talking about the young man who helped him across the street. "He asked your name, Marcus." That's unusual for him. William paused, studying the faded photographs on the mantel. Marcus at high school graduation, his father in a construction helmet, family portraits that documented a life built around work and hope and making do with less. "He wanted me to find you. I think he saw something in you that reminded him of himself at your age." The conversation that followed stretched late into the evening. Marcus found himself talking about dreams he'd rarely shared with anyone. His fascination with mechanical engineering, his plans to design better systems for automotive repair, his acceptance letters to 3 different universities, and his inability to pay for any of them. William listened without interrupting, occasionally asking quiet questions that revealed how closely he was paying attention. When Marcus mentioned the morning's humiliation at the coffee shop, the afternoon incident with the college students, and dozens of similar moments that had shaped his understanding of his place in the world, William's expression grew increasingly troubled. "I've been successful for so long that I forgot what it was like to be overlooked," William admitted. "My companies employ people like you and your mother, but I rarely interact with them directly anymore. I make decisions about layoffs and hiring from conference rooms, looking at spreadsheets instead of faces. I think I've lost touch with the human cost of those decisions." He pulled out his phone and showed Marcus a photo of his own father as a young man, the same Robert who'd struggled at the crosswalk, but decades earlier, standing proudly in his Navy dress uniform. Robert grew up poor in rural Mississippi. He was dismissed, underestimated, and written off by almost everyone he encountered. But he had something inside him that couldn't be diminished by other people's limitations. "I see that same quality in you." The offer came the next morning in William's downtown office, 30 floors above the city Marcus had walked through his entire life. Full tuition, room and board at Tennessee Institute of Technology. Preparatory courses to ensure academic success. A guaranteed internship at Harper Logistics after graduation with the possibility of full-time employment. But it wasn't charity, William insisted. It was an investment in recognizing potential that others had missed. To make the arrangement official and sustainable, he would establish the Harper Family Foundation's Hidden Potential Scholarship Program, with an initial funding of $250,000, designed specifically for academically promising students from working-class families. When the PR team suggested turning the scholarship announcement into a media event, William declined. This wasn't about publicity or corporate image. It was about correcting an oversight, both personal and societal. The only ceremonial element was a small gift, his father's pocket watch, carried through World War II and 30 years of naval service. "This watch has survived wars, storms, and decades of hard living," William told Marcus. "I think it can survive whatever challenges you'll face." The reaction at Jefferson High was swift and polarized. Some teachers expressed genuine excitement about Marcus's opportunity. Others whispered about affirmative action and questioned whether he truly deserved such support. In the auto shop, Joe was thrilled, but several regular customers made pointed comments about handouts and people getting ahead without earning it. Marcus tried to focus on the work, both his remaining months at the garage and his intensive preparation for university-level coursework, but the weight of others' expectations and resentments followed him everywhere. The transition to Tennessee Tech was both exhilarating and isolating. Marcus had never lived in a dormitory, never eaten in a dining hall, never owned textbooks that weren't 3 years old and falling apart. His roommate was polite but distant, a pre-med student from Nashville whose family had attended Tennessee Tech for 3 generations. Study groups formed naturally around existing friendships and social connections that Marcus didn't possess. When he excelled in his engineering courses, classmates asked if he'd had special tutoring or extra help. When he struggled with advanced mathematics, the same classmates nodded knowingly, as if his difficulties confirmed their pre-existing assumptions. But Marcus had learned something important during those years of being overlooked: how to work steadily, methodically, without requiring external validation. He spent long hours in the engineering lab, teaching himself CAD software and 3D modeling techniques. He volunteered for research projects that other students considered too time-consuming or unglamorous. Gradually, professors began to notice the quality of his work. Dr. Sarah Chen, who taught advanced mechanical systems, started assigning him increasingly complex problems. "You have an intuitive understanding of how things fit together," she told him after he solved a particularly challenging design problem. "That's not something we can teach. It's something you either have or you don't." By his junior year, Marcus had become an unofficial resource for struggling students. His patient explanations and willingness to help others understand difficult concepts made him popular with classmates who had initially been skeptical. The study group that had excluded him now sought his assistance. The roommate who had once been distant invited Marcus home for Thanksgiving. When the engineering department selected students for a prestigious summer internship with Harper Logistics, Marcus's name was at the top of the list, not because of his connection to William Harper, who had carefully avoided any involvement in the selection process, but because his professors considered him one of their most promising students. The internship placement took Marcus into the heart of William Harper's business empire. He spent the summer analyzing efficiency problems in the company's distribution network, identifying bottlenecks and proposing solutions that could save millions of dollars annually. His recommendations were detailed, practical, and demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of both engineering principles and business operations. When he presented his findings to the senior management team, the response was immediate and enthusiastic. 3 vice presidents requested copies of his analysis. The company implemented 2 of his major recommendations within months. William Harper, who had maintained careful distance during Marcus's internship to avoid any appearance of favoritism, was impressed by the reports he received from the management team. More importantly, he was moved by the feedback from warehouse workers and truck drivers who had interacted with Marcus during his research. Unlike most corporate analysts, Marcus had spent time on loading docks and in repair bays, asking questions and listening to suggestions from employees whose insights were rarely solicited. "That young man treated us like we knew something," one veteran driver told William. "Most of the suits who come through here act like we're furniture." The scholarship program that had begun with Marcus gradually expanded. William recruited other business leaders to contribute funding and identify promising students from backgrounds similar to Marcus's. The program established partnerships with community colleges, high schools in underserved neighborhoods, and trade organizations representing skilled workers. Each scholarship recipient was paired with a mentor and given opportunities for internships and career development. Within 3 years, the program was supporting 40 students annually across 5 universities. Marcus's senior year brought new challenges and recognition. His thesis project, a revolutionary design for automated warehouse systems that could reduce energy consumption by 30%, earned him the engineering department's highest honor. Graduate school offers arrived from MIT, Stanford, and Georgia Tech, but Marcus had already made his decision. He would return to Memphis and join Harper Logistics as a full-time engineer, helping to expand the company's operations throughout the Southeast. The graduation ceremony took place on a warm May evening, with families gathered on the university's main quadrangle. Marcus walked across the stage to receive his diploma, magna cum laude, and spotted his mother in the crowd, tears streaming down her face. Beside her sat William Harper and his father Robert, now 83 and still sharp-eyed, applauding quietly. After the ceremony, as families gathered for photographs and celebrations, Robert approached Marcus with slow, measured steps. "I wanted to thank you again," the old man said, his voice carrying the same dignity Marcus remembered from that afternoon at the crosswalk. Not just for helping me across the street, but for reminding my son what it means to pay attention to people. He's a good man, but he'd lost his way a little bit. You helped him find it again. Robert reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small wrapped package. I know William gave you my old watch, but this is from me personally. Inside was a compass, brass and worn, with initials carved in the back, REH 1943. My father gave me this when I enlisted. It's helped me find my direction more times than I can count. I think you might need it for whatever comes next. Marcus returned to Memphis as a full-time engineer at Harper Logistics, but his role extended far beyond technical work. William Harper had asked him to help develop new initiatives for community engagement and workforce development. Marcus spent part of his time solving complex logistics problems, and part of his time visiting high schools, community centers, and trade programs, talking to young people about opportunities they might not know existed. The scholarship program continued to grow, now supporting students in fields ranging from engineering to healthcare to business administration. The warehouse where his mother had once worked was renovated and reopened as a combination distribution center and training facility. The Harper Family Foundation partnered with Memphis City Schools to offer career development programs, internships, and mentorship opportunities. Marcus was appointed as the program's director, responsible for identifying talent that might otherwise go unnoticed. His first hire was Jasmine Williams, a 19-year-old single mother who had been working part-time at a fast food restaurant while taking night classes in computer programming. Her analytical skills were remarkable, but she lacked the connections and resources necessary to find appropriate employment. Within 6 months, she was managing database systems for the company's entire southern region. The changes weren't without resistance. Some longtime employees resented the attention paid to diversity and inclusion initiatives. A few clients questioned whether the company was prioritizing social responsibility over business efficiency. Marcus faced his share of skepticism and occasional hostility, but he had learned to respond with patient competence rather than defensive anger. When critics suggested that the scholarship program was lowering standards, Marcus pointed to the academic achievements and professional success of program graduates. When they questioned his own qualifications, he let his work speak for itself. 3 years after graduation, Marcus was promoted to senior engineer and asked to lead a major expansion project that would bring Harper Logistics into new markets across Texas and Louisiana. The project required careful coordination between multiple teams, sophisticated technical analysis, and delicate negotiations with local communities and government officials. Marcus assembled a diverse team that included scholarship program graduates, experienced engineers, and community leaders from the target markets. Their approach emphasized collaboration, environmental responsibility, and economic development that would benefit existing residents rather than displacing them. The Texas project's success led to national recognition. Industry publications featured articles about Harper Logistics' innovative approach to expansion and community engagement. Marcus was invited to speak at conferences and universities about sustainable business development. The scholarship program became a model for similar initiatives across the country. But the moment that meant the most to Marcus came during a quiet evening in Memphis, when he was walking home from the office and encountered a teenager struggling with a heavy backpack at the same intersection where he had once helped Robert Harper. Marcus didn't hesitate. He crossed the street, offered assistance, and helped the young man, David Chen, a recent immigrant whose family had fled political persecution in Hong Kong, carry his books to the bus stop. During their brief conversation, Marcus learned that David was brilliant at mathematics but struggling with English, working nights at a restaurant to help support his family, and unsure about his prospects for higher education. The next week, Marcus arranged for David to meet with scholarship program advisors. 6 months later, David was enrolled at the University of Memphis with full financial support, studying electrical engineering and volunteering as a tutor for other immigrant students. The encounter reminded Marcus of something William Harper had said during their first meeting. "We make decisions about people's lives every day, usually without realizing it. The choice to pay attention, to see potential instead of limitations, that choice can change everything." As Marcus walked home that evening, Robert Harper's compass in his pocket and his father's watch on his wrist, he understood that his story had become part of something larger than individual success. It was about creating systems that could identify and nurture human potential wherever it existed, regardless of the packaging in which it arrived. The scholarship program now supports over 200 students annually across 12 states. Harper Logistics has become a model for corporate social responsibility, with other companies implementing similar programs. Marcus serves on the boards of 3 educational foundations and has been appointed to the Tennessee Governor's Advisory Committee on Workforce Development. But the work that matters most to him happens in quiet moments. Conversations with young people who remind him of his younger self, encounters with potential that others might miss, opportunities to extend the same kind of recognition that had once changed his life. On the 10th anniversary of the scholarship program, the Harper family hosted a celebration at the renovated warehouse facility. More than 500 people attended: scholarship recipients, their families, company employees, community leaders, and the business executives who had joined the initiative over the years. Marcus gave the keynote address, speaking about the interconnectedness of individual opportunity and community development. He talked about the importance of seeing people as they could be rather than as they appeared to be, and about the responsibility that comes with recognition and success. The evening's most moving moment came when Robert Harper, now 91 and using a wheelchair but still sharp and dignified, presented Marcus with a special recognition. 10 years ago, my son asked me what I wanted for my birthday, Robert said, his voice carrying clearly through the warehouse's sound system. I told him I wanted to meet the young man who had helped me cross the street. That meeting changed our family and changed this company. But more than that, it reminded us of something we should never have forgotten: that kindness creates opportunities, and opportunities create more kindness. Marcus didn't just help me cross a street that day. He helped all of us cross into a better understanding of what we owe each other. Later that evening, after the guests had departed and the celebration had ended, Marcus stood alone in the warehouse, holding the compass his father had given Robert Harper nearly 8 decades earlier. Through the large windows, he could see the Memphis skyline, lights twinkling in the distance like scattered stars. He thought about all the young people he had met over the years, all the potential that had been waiting for someone to notice, all the lives that had been changed by the simple act of paying attention. Tomorrow he would return to his work, engineering solutions, managing projects, identifying the next generation of scholarship recipients. But tonight, he simply stood quietly in the space that had once employed his mother, that had once represented economic insecurity and limited options, and that now represented possibility and hope. The story of Marcus Johnson and William Harper became part of Memphis folklore, told and retold in schools and churches and community centers across the city. But its real impact wasn't in the telling. It was in the countless small moments when someone chose to look more carefully at the person standing next to them, when assumptions gave way to curiosity, when potential was recognized, regardless of its packaging. Every time a teacher spent extra time with a struggling student, every time an employer gave someone an unexpected opportunity, every time kindness created space for capability to emerge, the story continued. And sometimes, late at night, when Marcus walked through downtown Memphis past the intersection where his story had begun, he would pause and remember that afternoon when he had simply done what felt right. He would think about the invisible threads that connect one moment of decency to a lifetime of possibility, and he would smile at the mysterious ways that helping someone else cross the street can change the direction of your own journey. In his pocket, the compass would point steadily north, but Marcus had learned that the most important direction was not a compass point at all. It was the direction toward each other, toward recognition, toward the endless potential that exists in every person we encounter if only we take the time to see it. Remember this: talent recognizes no uniform, no skin color, no accent, no address. The next time you pass someone who seems invisible, pause long enough to notice who they really are. You might discover that helping them cross the street leads to crossing thresholds you never imagined possible.